All right. Here with segment 2
Yes.
on this, because last month we had 2 segments. I cut it up into 2, so I figured might as well keep going with 2.
Sure.
It's the way we act.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean that in a good way, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I got you.
I got it right here. Is it a page and a half? Page and a half.
Right on.
This was from June 24th, so that'd have been Thursday night.
Oh, right.
Okay, I didn't hit anything, right? Okay. Thursday night, yeah. It's one of those, it just seemed more like a typical night. It was raining that night. I remember that much for sure. And came home from work. That'd have been my second day back to work, so okay. But I ended up falling asleep. Usually I do, it's just, you get home, you relax for a minute, then you're passed out on the chair or couch or whatever,
Yeah.
2 or 3 hours later or whatever, you wake up, oh, I better go to bed. One of those type of things. So, you go and think about brushing your teeth, but you at least get a drink of water, right?
Yeah.
So then one of those, then I just laid in bed and I'm like, okay, well, it's 1 o'clock or whatever, I should be able to. But then I couldn't sleep. Just all these, it didn't feel like I was sleeping, but I think I must have sometime in there, just because, thoughts would come into my head. Then it's like, oh my God, I've got to be sleep. Because anytime when you want to go to sleep, it's like every time you look at the clock, it's like 10 minutes later.
Yes.
I'm like, oh my God, I got to get to sleep. Oh, it's only 10 minutes later. But every time I did that, I would think about 1 or 2 things, and it'd be like an hour later.
Oh no.
I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, then I really started noticing it. Then it was like, I would think it's like 10 minutes, but it was like an hour later. And I'm like, well, this is nuts. I'm like, what is there, some type of time something going on here or whatever? And I'm like, oh, this is kind of crazy. And this was like really heavy for some reason. I don't know how to describe heavy, but it's just like damn, why am just all these different thoughts. And I had to jot them down, because that's like, well, this is about the time I would usually be getting up anyway. Well, kind of, sort of.
Wow.
By 5 or 6 in the morning after laying there for 4 hours, and it just kept playing over and over again. It started with these 2 or 3 thoughts, and then it went back to those 2, 3, and just kept going over and over. It's like one of those, you don't forget that, okay? It's like,
wow.
Okay, but okay. And one of them pertains to you.
Oh wow, what's that? Now I'm intrigued.
That's crazy. Because the first thing I wrote down is the rain and thunderstorms are a better way to communicate, like energy in the air.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And then this one had to deal with my boss at work. I've never thought about him, and I'm like thinking, there was never any, when any of this was happening, there was never any guesswork. It's like, that's it. It's like, usually you kind of second guess yourself. It's like, really? Why would I be thinking it's just, that's it? So then I'm like, oh my God. So I kind of dreaded work the next day, and I'm like, I've got to do this, because I felt like I'm the messenger of the day. It's like, I got to tell these people that whatever message they had.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of halfway through the day, and I kind of saw my boss, and I'm like, he's like, what's up? And I'm like, can I talk to you for? Oh yeah, is everything okay? And yeah, and I was like, I'm kind of into that ghost thing, right? He's like, yeah. And I said, well, I got a message for you, and I told him this message, and I'm like, he's like, oh, okay, that's cool, and because half the time you feel like, I don't know, like the ghost whisper lady, it's kind of like they're going to laugh at you or something, or they're just going to run away, or they just, or some of the time you don't know whether they're just kind of humoring you, right? But then it's like, well, I got to tell them that's it. And the weird thing is like, he's like, okay, thanks for telling me, that's cool, that, all right. Then it was weird, he came out, he says, was it a man or a woman that said it? I'm like, that's kind of, I said it was a man, He's like, oh, okay, okay. And I'm like, well, he must know something, because I'm like, this is the answer. I don't know if it's something you're dealing with now or something that's coming up, but you need to know this. So I kind of left it at that. So I had the pendulum at work. Pendant. What do you call
Pendulum.
it? Pendulum.
The pendulum. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if it's pendulum, whatever the case.
Yeah.
So I was like kind of curious about that. Like after I talked to him, it was just kind of weird, and I'm like, so I got a hold of Veronica. So and I'm like, maybe it was his dad. Maybe it was his dad trying to give him a message. It's like no, it wasn't his dad. I'm like, oh, that's weird. I was wondering, was it some family member? And it said no, and I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. I said, what is it, like some higher power? And it's like, yeah. And I'm like, holy crap.
Wow.
I've never dealt with anybody higher than, I just deal with parents or something,
Yeah.
So that's kind of weird. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe he prayed about something. I don't know. But that was just kind of weird.
Wow.
And the Gen one. Sorry for that pause. I'm trying to. Sometimes it's hard to jot down what you're writing.
Yeah.
I want to do things now because I've seen things in the future that may not give us time to do things. I don't know if that what I kind of get out of it is like, we're having fun now, we're doing stuff and whatever, but it just seems like there's something in the future that's going to disrupt this whole thing. So it feels like I'm trying to cram in everything now before the party's over. You know what I mean, kind of per se or something. Maybe like some type of a job thing. It's kind of like, whoa, I got a different job in the Quad Cities or something, or what was the other one? Yeah, job or moving or something like that. Just something really bizarre, but it's just kind of like, oh man, this is great. And then it's just like, well, God, what if? Then I know you kept talking about maybe doing the podcast thing, and stuff. And I'm like, well, what if that gets big enough? It's like, well, I can't leave now because I've got such and such lined up or whatever the case, and I don't know. That's just kind of weird. It's just.
Yeah.
Threw me for a loop a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I can't think of anything that would do that. Why? Now I know for sure we're not going to be moving. We're going to be here for a very long time.
Yeah.
As far as the job thing, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, I'm pretty good where I'm at.
Yeah.
I mean, the podcasting, absolutely, I would love that. I got to get going. I got to get started. I'm waiting to hear back from a book company on something that I'm working on with that. But and even if it did take off, obviously, like I would have we could always do a podcast on an investigation or something like that. So I wouldn't allow that. I don't think to get in the way of anything.
Well, I think it just seemed more like one of those, when you're happy and everything seems to be going good. Just kind of like the other team, and then suddenly, he gets married off, he's gone, and he moved out of town because his mom was sick or this or that. Then you're down to where'd everybody go?
Yeah, there's that, yeah.
But that was just kind of weird. It's like I tell some of these people, I don't know where this stuff comes from, but it's just kind of, what? This is kind of strange.
Yeah.
And another one's about this lady at work. I told her about it before, and obviously it came back again for some reason. So
wow.
it's just like, what? Oh, I think that was kind of related to her because I wrote down, when you think you're talking to yourself, you're actually talking to them.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, you think you're crazy, but it's just like, oh, geez, why'd you make that left-hand turn? It's kind of like you're talking to somebody that's there or something. It's like, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense, really.
Yeah, it does, yeah. Especially if you were, like, raised an only child or something, and, like, you didn't have, like, a brother or sister there.
Yeah.
Like me, I was an only child, so, like, my parents, when I was younger, I'm sure I probably had, like, an imaginary friend or something.
Well, I think that's kind of like it, It's like you can do it as a child, but, once you get old enough, you can't be doing that kind of stuff. And it's just like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
And then one I had was about Laura.
Oh,
You remember
okay.
Laura?
Yeah.
And I ended up getting a hold of her yesterday. And it's just like, I didn't realize that I hadn't talked to her like in like months or whatever. And I'm like, damn, I feel kind of bad. But I texted her and whatever because I needed her help about finding some stuff on the Willard Library and what was the other one? Willard Library and about the guy that started YouTube,
Oh.
and because I'm like, Laura, what's with she's because they told me it's like she can find stuff in 5 minutes that would take you like 5 days to find something. She has a very good database or whatever, and the things she can find in like 2 minutes is just like, what the hell, really?
She's really good at that, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, I didn't really go into any type of detail because she's like, well, I'm going to a wedding that I'm in on this weekend, and I'm like, ooh, okay, why don't you just hit me up when you get back because I need to talk to you. I need to get her up to speed a little bit. She's like, I hope it's about some haunted house or something. Well, kinda,
Kinda.
So that was kind of interesting, and I think she's a vital part, because you start seeing different things that are like important, because it's like, for me, it's like I need to like the Willard Library because I'm gonna have to go back down there.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just one of those. I found out some key things that it's like you need to go for these particular reasons. So I'm like, my God, really? I was just there and I was thinking, but it's like, well, I got to, it's like one of those type things. But it's just, you start finding out like once you've been there once, and then it's like, well, now I've got more answers that I need to, and more questions that I need answers for too, and I kept
Sure.
thinking about, keeping in contact with some of these people that are that have been really interesting type places, like the lady in Washington, with her house, that's really, I think there's something there that's kind of intriguing that, you want to keep going back to. And
Yeah.
also that other farmhouse up north that we went to that one particular time where he got some stuff outside and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
there seemed to be a lot going on there too, but
Yeah.
those places just seem to stick out in my mind for some reason.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that farmhouse the other day, actually. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that one.
Then I kept thinking, I don't know if any of these places may be linked, because they always talked about, these different like ley lines and stuff or whatever. I know these don't fit into like ley line things, but why is like those two places important and the Willard Library important too for some reason? I can't quite figure out, but they are important for some particular reason. I can't quite put my finger on it.
Like, do you think it's connected to just you? Like they're important to you for some reason?
I don't know.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, you've been to both places outside of the library, but
Yeah, and I mean, I don't feel a strong connection to the farmhouse, but I was just thinking about that the other day, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that place. That place was cool, with the barn out back, and then, the house. I remember going and sitting in there last time we were there. I think it was like, go and sit for 15 minutes. Like each of us took that turn. Go and sit in the dark for 15 minutes and see if anything happens. I remember that. And it was kind of a cool place. And then, what was the other one? I'm trying to remember now.
the Washington house.
Yeah, the Washington house. That place was weird. Like, just how different we both were during that investigation.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, holy cow, something is definitely wrong here. Um, yeah, I don't know, but it was kind of messed up.
When did you think about that farmhouse?
When?
How long ago was that?
A couple weeks ago, probably.
Really?
Hmm.
That's interesting. I didn't know whether it's something that I astro projected to you or not. Yeah, right.
Maybe.
Yeah, right. Like that happens, right?
Potentially.
For some reason, I had like the Willard Library and Villisca and Lizzie Borden are all important to paranormal people. I think that's what I maybe was thinking about that, or I don't know. What I was thinking about these is they're special in the certain way that they haven't been disturbed by time. You know, they're locked into, you know, that time
Yeah.
frame.
Yeah.
You know, because nothing has changed. You know, yeah, it's been painted or whatever, but it just seems like whatever plot of land they're on, that is like, whenever you step onto it, it's like 19 something, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
And I wonder if that may be important in some aspects to some of these places that, you know, like say a Gettysburg hotel that's still the way it was back in, you know, the given days or whatever.
Yeah, it almost kind of reminds me of a grandiose version of like Eric Hughes. Like, you know, so if we come to an investigation and we bring like a little teddy bear from the time or something, that's an era Q. But
Yeah.
having it be a whole thing that hasn't changed, like that's a huge version of an era Q that some, you know, a spirit would definitely, you know, be like, yeah, I know this because this is how it was back then. The whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, definitely so. And I think that's why you end up using Q things, is to hopefully do. Now, do you?
Spur.
Yeah, yeah. Now, do you think that some people had said like that dimensions are like overlapped, like as far as like time is or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
That even though we're in now, but we're trying to communicate with,
Back then.
yeah, or some type of a afterlife, maybe not afterlife, but that particular time. But whether they're all stacked up, as far as, I wonder what they would be stacked up as, like every 50 years there's a stack or what,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, gosh, I don't know.
But then again, I've heard that time is like, you're having like three different time at once, three different time.
like time periods, or
I don't want to say it's like time periods, but it's kind of like, you know, options maybe or something. You know, it's kind of like whenever you come to like a decision, you know, you got an A or a B, so you know that's going off that way and that's going off that way. So you got like
right?
all these, everything is running concurrent. You know, if you would have made this decision or that decision, and then branching off from there. So you got like all these different
Like universes.
ultimate universes or something.
Yeah, yeah, that's a huge theory, the infinite universe theory kind of thing. Which, honestly, to me, like, that's not off the table. I mean, who knows, really? I mean, there really is so much that we just don't know that, like, we think we do. Like, we know what we can see, we know what we can touch and feel and hear, like, we know that. But there's so much outside of just us that who knows what's real and what's not. And, you know, like all these different dimensions, like, yeah, like, okay, so I'm making the decision now to like touch my computer. Well, now a universe just happened where like I didn't do that. I decided not to do that. So it's like, you know, who knows, but it's kind of a fascinating thought for sure.
And some people think that maybe that's where kind of the deja vu theory kind of came into, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but I always thought that was more like a time, maybe a time skip, but a time jump or something. I thought it was more like something that's already happened that you're like living through again, kind of a like Groundhog's Day instead of versus, something that's splitting off, I guess, per se.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, for me, when I experience deja vu, it almost makes me think like I dreamt it before, because I'm like, well, how could I have done this before already or something? So it's like maybe I had dreamt it, because apparently you dream I don't know how many times a night, and then you wake up and you don't remember most of them. So it's like, well, maybe I had like a prophetic dream or something, and like then I experienced the deja vu, and then it's like, oh, okay, my mind is like, you dreamt that already. But I don't know.
So you dream it and it's actually coming true to some extent?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was just going to say, because I had one of those, I don't know if it's something like that before, but it's just like, I told these people back then, and now they're trying to relive it again. It's kind of like telling the same, you're getting tired of telling the same old story all the time or something,
Yeah.
But I think that's just them not listening, but it's just like, I don't know, that's weird.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, this is kind of a funny one. It's the one about the Edinburgh Manor.
Okay.
About the three guys in the basement. The three guys in the basement? Well, between us, not like they, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'd like to go back, talk to them and whatever. But they like being left alone.
Oh.
And they talked about, it's funny, they talked about somebody that investigated there that we know, and they said that they possessed him to make him look crazy on TV, to make people not want to go there, to make it look scarier than what it is.
Oh, wow. Gotcha.
And I'm like, I'm like, what? And they were like, and they were even laughing about this. They were like saying that it was so easy. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
I'm like, huh? That was weird.
Huh, that's cool.
And this was a very strange one, because I just had a nephew that had died a couple weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Sorry.
Yeah. And it was funny because I remember the last time we were talking was, I don't know, years ago or whatever, when I had met up with them back in my hometown, and he's like, you do that ghost hunt stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah. He's like, and he had like, he talked to me like 2 hours and hours about it. Well, probably at least a couple, It's like, you think you could do that? You think you could do this? It's like, man, I'd love to be able to go to this place and see what's going on there. So he was kind of into it, so that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
But it was weird to see him on the other side, and he looked totally, I don't want to say like scared or lost or confused or something like that, but it looked like the process was taking so long to do what you need to do. But I'm sure that's how because time is like different. For us, we have like, oh my God, it's been an hour, versus they have no concept of it, that, to where we think it's like, man, are you kidding me? And, it may just be 10 minutes for them, so it's one of those type things. So it's like, it's like one of those, it's like, they said when they pass over, it's like one of those, they take care of like people that are hurting around them, like right then, hey, I'm wherever, whatever. But then it seems like they don't come back for like another 6 months, which is like, damn, that's a hell of a long time. But to them, it's like,
a second or something.
like 3 days or something like that. So it's just like, it was weird to see him in like that position, but it wasn't as bad as you would think. That's kind of weird that you would think everything would just happen automatically, and this is just like, chugging along type thing. That was weird.
Wow,
that came from. And the last one was about Cat.
Oh.
Which is interesting, but yeah, that's like, huh? It just said, tell her to thank her and that she's a beautiful person and kiss her on the forehead.
Aww. Cat is a beautiful person.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay. Now that I've divulged all that, now that I look like some type of a crazy person,
No.
but
No.
but it's like some of these, I think somebody at work, I think, was talking about that. Maybe I just had a deja vu moment or whatever, but it's just like one of those. I think we were talking about people that had premonitions or something. It's like, yeah, somebody said that tower in Miami was going to fall down or something, and it was predicted in some or whatever, and it's like, well, why didn't somebody say something more about it? Or maybe, I think it's maybe more about the COVID thing, that some lady had wrote like 3 years ago that, COVID was going to happen this year. She specifically said this year, and, it was going to do in China or something, She actually
really?
named everything, and it's like, huh? It's like, I think they were debating on whether they should have done something more, or maybe not even published it, or is it one of those that maybe shouldn't even I don't know if you'd acknowledge it, or I don't know.
Yeah. Well, something like that, at least, in my opinion, I think people have a hard time with that until it actually happens, because it's like anybody can be like, oh yeah, like how many times have people said, oh yeah, well, the Earth's going to come, the world's going to come to an end on whatever day, and then of course the day goes by and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And so it's like anybody can be like, oh yeah, well, on this day this is going to happen, but until it actually does, it could just be, somebody just spewing whatever. But yeah, it's like, okay, well, it actually, if, this lady actually wrote that book, and it, since COVID did happen, it's like, well, we can't take every precaution for every time someone says, hey, it's blah, 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 this is going to happen this day. So it's like, which ones do we pay attention to, and which ones, because I mean, if you would have told me like 3 years ago that there would have been an epidemic or a pandemic or what, in 2020, and like, the United States was going to shut down and all this stuff, I would have been like, what? That's crazy,
Yeah.
But it did, and, it's like a different society now, and...
Right.
But, yeah.
But that's like one of those things too. It's like a lot of people spew a lot of things every year, and it's kind of like, well, yeah, there's going to be a war somewhere,
Sometimes, so yeah.
Yeah, and there's somebody's gonna, different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I don't know.
Yeah. That's just it. It's like, what do we take seriously, and what can we just be like, okay,
Right.
So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I got. You got anything else you want to?
I don't think so. No, nothing that I can think of to add, really. But.
Yeah. I'm kind of at a loss too, so I guess maybe we'll just end it there then.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Yeah.
Might as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because at least by that time we'll hopefully have maybe gone over something, or probably at least been back from Sally House anyway.
Yeah, that'd be good, yeah. So, I know, so, coming up, see, the weekend after July 4th, like, I'll do my best to kind of go through some of the footage, like, during the week, but the weekend after July 4th, I have to go, up and see my uncle. My uncle isn't doing good right now, so, yeah, up in Minneapolis, so, my mom and I are going to go up and see him that weekend. And then the weekend after that is Sally House.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's good.
All the stuff coming soon, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we need like one of those banners. It's like, coming soon.
Yeah, plus the presentation soon.
Oh, yes. Good.
It's got to be live by now, right? I mean, the way everything is.
I would hope so. Yeah, I've been fully vaccinated now, so I'm good. I know you have, so.
Yeah?
Yeah, so we're good.
I can't see why they wouldn't, but
Yeah.
I mean, some places you can't even eat in yet, so okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess I did. No, well, that was last weekend. Yeah, I went down to Missouri to the Civil War place.
Oh, good.
So that was good.
Good.
Yeah, I kind of got down there a little bit later than I had wanted to. But I didn't want to go like at noontime because I figured maybe the guy's eating lunch if he's even there today. Because
Yeah.
I knew, the next couple weeks he was going to be off. He's going to be up in Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
So that's crazy. So you might be up there, maybe run it. Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, you never know.
True.
I'm not sure like what he looks like, so I could be standing right next to him.
You know what? That is true. You have never met him yet.
No, I haven't.
That's kind of interesting, but yeah. So I just talking to him for here and there, and then suddenly it got to be, because he's only there till a certain time, and then I was like looking at the clock. I'm like, oh shit, it's like running a little bit over here. Then he's like, oh, here's my boss, and his boss came up, and I'm like, oh man. So he sat down. We talked for another hour, and I'm like, damn, it's definitely time to go by now, because I'm hungry,
Yeah. Time to eat.
Exactly. And he's like, sorry, didn't get a chance to go around any places to let you in or do it. No.
That's okay. Next time.
Just wanted to catch up. I haven't seen you in a year and a half or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
cool.
It was
That's good.
It was interesting. So yeah.
That's good.
Let me know if you ever want to go back.
Yeah, no, I do.
Yeah,
at some point.
that's kind of a trip for you though.
It is a little. It's kind of a ways, but some point I do want to get back down there at some point because the place is really cool. But.
Yeah, and I told a few people, it's like, yeah, if you ever want to go down there. So.
Yeah.
It is. It's nice to have that opportunity. Plus now, knowing the head ranger too, might be make things a little more interesting too. A little easier access to things, hopefully. So, but
definitely.
We'll see. We'll figure out what's going on.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, till next month. Another month has gone by already. Ooh.
Yeah, I know, it's insane. I can't believe it's almost halfway through 2021 already.
It's crazy.
I know.
It seems like you lost a year already. Now everything's like speeding up.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. One of the greatest things that I've ever heard, my uncle actually said it, and I'll never forget it. So I wanted to share it with you and with everybody because of how true it is. My uncle has always said, life is like a toilet paper roll. The closer to the end, the faster it goes.
Wow, so true.
So true.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that. I'll never forget that because I'm like, wow, that is so true.
That is true. That seems like something you would say at Edinburgh, just one of those trying to live the moment up at the moment, just.
Yeah, telling one of my jokes or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Well, hopefully your rest of the weekend will go good, and we'll talk to you soon again.
That sounds good. You too, Greg.
Yes. Woohoo.
Bye.